Narrator. The courtroom was silent. The air was thick with tension as the judge took a deep breath before delivering his verdict. The defendant, 18-year-old Daniel Carter, stood frozen, his hands trembling as he awaited his fate. Then, the words came like a death sentence. Judge. Daniel Carter, for the crime of first-degree murder, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Narrator. A gasp rippled through the room. Daniel's mother collapsed into sobs. His best friend shook his head in disbelief, and Daniel himself felt like he had left his own body. This had to be a mistake. It was a nightmare, one he couldn't wake up from. Because Daniel was innocent. Screen flashes to news reports, social media outrage, and clips of Daniel being taken away in handcuffs. Narrator. But then, just as all hope seemed lost, Daniel made a phone call. Not to a lawyer, not to a journalist, but to his father. And his father was the Vice President of the United States. Screen shifts to dramatic flashback of Daniel's life before the trial, showing him as a regular high school senior, playing football, hanging out with friends, living a normal life. Narrator. Daniel was an ordinary teenager with dreams of going to college and playing football professionally. But one night changed everything. Cut to the night of the crime. The screen darkens. A storm brews in the background. Narrator. It was a Friday night when Daniel's best friend, Ryan Collins, called him, panicked. Ryan was in trouble. He had gotten into an altercation at a convenience store, and things had gone horribly wrong. A man had been stabbed, and Ryan was at the scene. He needed help. Scene shows Daniel rushing to Ryan's side, trying to calm him down. Police sirens wail in the distance. Narrator. What Daniel didn't know was that security cameras had already captured everything, but in the worst twist of fate, the footage was blurry. And because Daniel was seen arriving just before the police, they assumed he was the killer. Flashes of Daniel being arrested, interrogated, and screaming that he was innocent. Narrator. Despite having no motive, despite the lack of physical evidence, the prosecution was relentless. The media painted him as a troubled youth with a violent streak. Witnesses, pressured by detectives, falsely identified him as the murderer. The real killer? He was nowhere to be found. Back to the courtroom. The judge slams his gavel. Judge. Take him away. The screen darkens. Then, bam, a jail cell slams shut. Narrator. Just like that, Daniel's life was over until he made that phone call. Cut to Daniel sitting in his cell, using his one phone call. Daniel. Dad, you have to believe me. I didn't do this. Cut to a serious-looking man in a suit, his father, the Vice President of the United States. He listens intently, his expression shifting from disbelief to rage. Narrator. Most people would assume being the Vice President's son would make Daniel untouchable, but the government couldn't be seen giving special treatment. If anything, they worked harder to convict him to avoid any claims of bias, but Daniel's father wasn't about to let his son rot in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Scenes of lawyers being called, the vice president making urgent calls, reporters picking up the story. Narrator. And then, breaking news. A mysterious new witness came forward with an anonymous tip, but before he could testify, he disappeared. His house was found abandoned, his phone disconnected. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Cut to a shadowy figure watching from a distance. Narrator. Something was wrong. Someone didn't want the truth to come out. Then, even more chilling, security footage from the police station went missing. The only evidence that could have cleared Daniel? Gone. Flash to Daniel's father pacing angrily in the White House. Vice President. Someone is covering this up, but why? Cut to Daniel in prison, growing weaker by the day, losing hope. Narrator. Weeks turned into months, and the case only grew stranger. The judge who sentenced Daniel mysteriously resigned. The lead detective on the case was found dead under unknown circumstances. It was as if the entire justice system was hiding something much bigger. Scene fades to Daniel receiving a cryptic letter in his prison cell. Narrator. Then, one day, Daniel received an unsigned letter. It read, "The truth is buried where the cameras don't reach. Trust no one, not even your father." Cut to Daniel staring at the letter, his heart pounding. Narrator. Daniel's case was